Hi, I'm Gregg LeFevre, and this is The Compulsive Storyteller, a series of short personal stories where we explore the idea that truth can be stranger than fiction. You'll hear two types of episodes here: my regular full-length stories told in around 20 minutes, and shorties, quick, short stories told in 5 to 10 minutes. New episodes are out every other week. This week we have a full-length episode entitled Beautiful Korean Gambler. Beautiful Korean Gambler. Imagine there is a woman whose father gambles away all the family's money. So her mother divorces him, and now she has to bring up her daughter as a single mom. Now imagine further that the daughter becomes a gambler herself, except she isn't a compulsive gambler like her father, but instead an incredibly talented professional whose raison d'etre is to seek revenge against the casinos that bankrupted her family. That's Yoon-ja Yim, and this is the story of meeting her many years ago. Online in front of me at an all-you-can-eat buffet at a casino in Las Vegas is an Asian woman. She turns slightly, and I can see that she is a beauty, so I decide to engage her in conversation. "Excuse me, miss, is this the $10 buffet?" She turns toward me and says, "Yes, it is." I smile and say, "The all-you-can-eat buffet?" Now we're both smiling. She has shoulder-length jet black hair, smooth porcelain skin, a modest amount of makeup, and is dressed fashionably, all in white, Ann Taylor. She catches me looking her up and down, and I try to cover my rudeness by saying, "You certainly don't look like you take full advantage of the buffet." She smiles again, and then I ask, "So please, tell me what you're doing in town." "Oh, I'm on holiday. I like to gamble, so I'm here at the Rio Casino. And you?" This wasn't true, of course, but I didn't learn that until later. I'm supervising the installation of my public artwork at Terminal D at the airport. Interesting. So you're a professional artist? That I am. Are you a painter or a sculptor? She calls me a sculptor, not a sculptor, which happens surprisingly often. I then contort my body into a static pose like a figurative sculpture. My little routine, however, is totally lost on her, so I continue. "I'm a sculptor, but the project I'm working on most people wouldn't consider to be sculpture. I've designed the entire floor of Terminal D as a flight map with different color terrazzo and thousands of inset zinc words and flight symbols. The best part of the project are the scale model cast aluminum Boeing jetliners that I've placed on the stainless steel panels between the escalators so they appear as if they're landing on a flight map." She tells me that she's impressed but has to go, which I find disappointing. Then she offers to treat me to dinner that night at one of the casino's nicer restaurants. I feel a little awkward about letting her treat me, but decide we can discuss the check when we meet up later. Being one of those people who's always early, I make my way to dinner ahead of schedule. As I walk through the casino, I spot her at one of the blackjack tables. She's so focused on the game that she doesn't notice me. She is all business, but then, just at the time we're supposed to meet, she arises from the table to make her way to the restaurant. I intercept her, saying, "Hello, I love someone who's right on time." She takes my arm and gently leads me toward the Surf and Turf restaurant. Once we're seated at our table, I help her with her chair and we sit down. We decide to split 2 entrees, the shrimp scampi and the New York strip steak, done medium rare. I'm pleased that our tastes in food seem to align, and I'm excited we get to spend some leisurely time together. Over dinner, she asked me to share some of my impressions of Las Vegas. "Sure, I've had a bunch of different interesting experiences, some weirder than others." She nods. For example, I've flown back and forth a bunch of times to New York where I live. I always fly Tower Airlines because it's so cheap, just $80 each way. It's full of overweight, wannabe successful gamblers, mostly middle-aged men or older. The dress code seems to be cheesy-looking leisure suits, gold neck chains, and tinted glasses. Most take full advantage of the alcohol beverage service. Over time, on many of the flights I've taken, I've had a chance to engage the passengers sitting next to me in conversation, and they all present themselves as big-time winners when it comes to gambling. What a crazy coincidence, I say to Jun with a chuckle, to be in a plane full of gamblers who manage to outwit the house in spite of the odds. She smiles knowingly at my story and says, "Tell me more." Let's see. Oh yeah, I learned when I checked into the Rio that if I bought $5,000 worth of poker chips, my room would be free. So that's what I did, and then I put the chips in the safe in my room. Since I'm out here working my ass off doing my sculpture project, I had no intention of gambling. After a couple days, I received a note under my door to stop in at the front desk downstairs. The gentleman behind the desk looked me up and announced, "You're not gambling." "How do you know that?" I responded. "Because the chips are coded and can be traced. So either start gambling or start paying for your room." I was disappointed but then relieved when I learned the price of my room. It had a sunken jacuzzi bathtub and a balcony with a beautiful view of the Strip and was only $90 a night. The cost of everything in this town is predicated on the fact that everybody gambles, and seeing that I did not, I could take advantage. Over the next weeks, I spent my days working on the airport project and my nights with Jun. As I got to know her better, there seemed to be a place at her very core that she never shared with anyone. She resisted all my questions and attempts to try to get her to open up. She never shared her feelings, nor seemed to have any psychological insights about herself. No self-awareness whatsoever. However, sometimes, after she'd had a few stiff drinks, she loosened up and revealed the occasional detail. She grew up with her mother and her grandmother in a rural town outside of Seoul. She loved to run around on her bare feet outside when she was young, particularly in the rain. She didn't care for school, nor have many friends. She remembered fondly the family dog, the cat, the rooster, the chickens, and the vegetable garden. She was not so fond of the daily chores that she was assigned to do. My most interesting discovery was that at the tender age of 3 or 4, her grandmother found an old tattered deck of Korean playing cards in a drawer and gave them to Jun. From that time forward, she took great pleasure in laying out different patterns and formations of cards on the floor of their house. She wasn't interested in learning any card games, but just in making patterns. When she shared this with me, her face took on a beautiful, wistful look that I'd never seen before. All these childhood memories created a bundle that was totally at odds with the quiet, urbane, cosmopolitan woman that I was getting to know. About that time, she shared an interesting gambling tip with me. Apparently, there are certain slot machines that pay out more than they should. Sometimes there's a lag before they're fixed or taken offline, and some of the cocktail waitresses know which ones they are. Jun suggested that I tip a cocktail waitress $20 and ask her to point out a lucky machine. The first time I tried, I got nothing. The second time, I was rewarded with the familiar sound of coins cascading out of the machine, and me without a bucket. There were some big problems brewing with my airport job, which I confided in Jun. I discovered that the terrazzo contractor out of Los Angeles was cheating on the job. The terrazzo floor was supposed to be 1/2 inch thick, but everything was being installed 1/4 inch thick, making the floor half as thick as it was supposed to be. When I confronted the job foreman about this, he gave me some bullshit answer that was clearly a lie. He then pulled me aside, where none of the workers could hear, and told me, "Listen, Mr. Big Artist, my boss is connected, if you know what I mean, and I suggest for your own safety that you forget about making any trouble for us. Got it?" I just walked away shaking my head. Jun recommended that I better follow his advice. As we grew more intimate, she finally revealed her true purpose in Las Vegas: revenge. Blackjack was her game, and her system was elaborate. It began with her scouting out all the blackjack dealers at a particular casino. Dealers worked 8 hours per shift, usually dealing 40 minutes to an hour, and then they went on a 20-minute break. When a dealer started their shift, they checked the road map to see which table they were assigned to work at. She watched each dealer and developed charts to keep track of at what point they were most likely to make a mistake. Her charts, posted on the walls of her hotel room at the casino, resembled the crime charts you've seen in so many detective movies. Once she finished her research, she sat down at her intended victim's table at a point when they were most likely to make a mistake. She never made mistakes. She would hold a drink that looked like vodka and tonic, but was in fact seltzer and lime. She varied her dress, her makeup, and how she wore her hair, so that she was in no way memorable. Once seated, she gave the dealer a $100 tip right up front. Then she began by doubling down. As expected, the dealer would make a mistake, while she would not. So began her inevitable streak of good luck. In any session at a casino, she would always quit before she reached $10,000 in winnings. That's the point at which people sitting somewhere behind the scenes, watching banks of CCTV screens, would start to take notice. When she invited me up to her room to show me her gambling charts, we kissed. She was a good kisser, and as is the case in the best of romances, kissing led to hugging and touching and finally to sex. The physical part of our relationship was great. She was passionate as well as giving, and when she was fully aroused, she orgasmed deeply, although she was very quiet about it, which I found a little disappointing. With a thin body and smooth, blemishless porcelain skin, I loved making love to her. Time progressed, and I found myself falling in love with Jun. Here was a beautiful woman who had built her own independent life, was successful, and also seemed to love me as well. One day, I invented a game about how much we loved each other and convinced her to play. I started with, "Jun, I'm head over heels in love with you." And I suggested that she respond, "Gregg, I love you too." I continued, "Jun, I'm completely infatuated with you." And Jun responded, "Gregg, I love you too." Next I said, "Jun, I'm utterly charmed by you." Jun, sounding frustrated and sad, said that she didn't know what to say next because I was raised speaking English and she was not. "I'm so sorry, Jun. I just thought this would be fun for you. So do you mind if I continue and you just listen?" Jun, speaking weakly, said, "Okay. I really do love you so much. You're the be-all and end-all for me. You're my stars and the moon. You're my whole life." I was mad at myself after I forced her to play the game and decided that somehow I would make it up to her. A few days later, she shared with me that she owned a house in Santa Monica on the beach and asked if I could take a week off from my project and join her there. I was totally overjoyed. When we arrived in Santa Monica, I found her house to be a beautiful Spanish-style colonial building right on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. The views were stunning and the grounds lushly landscaped. While the interior of the house was colorfully painted and furnished in keeping with the architecture, the artwork on the walls reminded me of the type of art displayed in so many hotels, just like the ones Jun stayed in when she was gambling. Among professional artists, this type of work is actually called hotel art, and real artists never talk about taking on such projects, even though some do. Everything started wonderfully at her home, away from Las Vegas and our responsibilities. But as the week progressed, I could sense her pulling away from me. The last day, she cooked me a Korean lunch, something she'd never done before. And then she sat me down in the living room for a talk. "Gregg, there's something I have to tell you." I was now getting a little alarmed and sat up straighter in my chair. She went on, "You're a great guy, and I care deeply for you, but I don't want to feel tied down." "Tied down? But you're free to do whatever you want. We each have our own careers." "Yes, that's true, but I've decided I want to travel around the world, visiting dozens of casinos in cities I've never been to. And if I'm going to do this, I want to do it by myself. Besides, you couldn't come with me. You'd have to abandon your career here, which you spent a lifetime building." I'd actually thought to myself that maybe I should follow her. That's how much I cared for Jun. She continued, "I'm actually leaving for the airport in a few minutes, but you're free to stay here for as long as you want." I started to cry, but Jun's eyes were dry. She stood up and gave me an awkward hug and walked out the front door and was gone, leaving me completely devastated with no idea what to do with myself. I just sat there miserably in the living room and watched the sun set slowly over the Pacific. When I recovered somewhat and got back to Las Vegas, I had a chance to think over the length and breadth of our relationship. I realized that despite her financial success, Jun was a classic compulsive gambler like her father, escaping from life into the casino. But if you check the DSM-5, you won't find her condition listed under any gambling addiction. That's because Jun would be in a category all her own. Copyright 2026 by Gregg LeFevre. All rights reserved. If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Compulsive Storyteller, and we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is independently produced, so we really appreciate all your help and support. Share the show with your friends, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. You can also check out our website, thecompulsivestoryteller.com, for more information. Thanks for listening, and if you didn't like this one, the next one will be another story. The Compulsive Storyteller is now co-produced by Gregg LeFevre and Fadia Montserrat, who's also arranged the music and created the special effects. Emily Ramon does design, research, editing, and marketing. Peter Kokoma has made our theme music and for many seasons co-produced the show with me. All characters and events portrayed in this podcast are based on my truth, with some names and facts changed for privacy. The conversations and dialogues are based on my best memory, but are not word-for-word recreations.